Now, with the precursors being done, I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to Town Hall on July 2nd, 2012 for our July meeting, and it is good to see each and every one of you here. We've just always been so proud of the building of the meeting hall that when people come in, we open it up to you. We're very proud to do that. First item on the agenda is to talk about the minutes from our board meetings. It says June 4th, but not every board meetings we have in from the minutes. I asked what the aldermen say about the accuracy, changes, motions, such as that.
I make a motion to accept.
All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, that passes without objection.
Mr. Mayor, while we have a minute before the public hearing begins, the only thing I would add to what you said about the public hearing is just a reminder, and this is important for the minutes of this meeting and that public hearing, that the purpose is also potentially is for the use of the town hall, the public safety building, the public works building as collateral for refinancing type loans. They may all be rolled in together. We're still awaiting some final numbers from some banks for proposal, but all of those are potential collateral for refinancing. At the very least, I think all the existing loans are going to be refinanced using that property as collateral. That may take the form of just a write-down. It doesn't really require a public hearing, but just to cover all the bases, that's the purpose of this.
So keep talking and explain to the board that the plan is to not just solo out the issue from the ABC board and have a separate loan for it, but to have it as...
It may be. At the August meeting, we'll have final numbers and loan packages for the board to review and select one or the other, and whichever way is the most advantageous to the town is the way to be presented. But it may be that it's to the town's advantage to single that out and make it a separate loan from all the other refinancing.
That good? You got that?
Yes.
Yeah. Check your phones. Check your weapons. Okay. Call the public hearing to order. I'm going to take a little bit of privilege on the folks who have signed up. I'm going to first, at his request, he's on a tight schedule, Mr. Orville Coward Jr. Would you like to be heard, sir?
Your Honor, Mayor Collins, members of the board, Mr. Henning, Mr. Greenwood, thank you for allowing me to speak and to the issue at hand. And I've spoken to this board before, and I want to say at the outset that I deeply respect everyone I've seen. You're my friends, and whatever you decide ultimately about the location of the ABC store, I'll still respect you, and you'll still be my friends. But I rise and come here because I do have had some feelings that have come to me, and some thoughts that have come to me about this, and some questions, and I don't know a whole lot about it. I don't know the best place for the ABC store is. I'm not going to try to tell you how. But I've come here as a taxpayer in this town. And there are a lot of taxpayers in this town. And this town has been hit by a slow hurricane in the past 4 or 5 years. We don't see it because we've all lived through it slowly. But if you look at Franklin in 2006 and you look at Franklin in 2012, it's not the same place. There are empty buildings. There are businesses that have gone out, downsized, or cut many employees. It's a different town And yet, and we understand this, taxpayers understand that the tax revenues can't go down. The tax rate can't go down. And we understand how the evaluation occurred, and it's a lawful and sensible thing. And yet, bank payments continue on hundreds of property owners in this town. Lots of whom have vacant places. Taxes continue on, and the town hasn't turned the corner yet. One thing I've noticed about you all on this board is that you all have the best interest of this town at heart, and you love this town. That's why you're here, and you give a lot of your time and effort and yourselves for this cause. An ABC store, it seems to me, I'm no expert about ABC stores, it seems to me that a lot of people go to the ABC store. An ABC store is, if you will, a magnet or a destination point for people to go to. I don't think there needs to be a magnet or a destination point at the new Walmart. I think it is its own magnet, its own destination point. And I, for one, am very glad it's here. And I think it would be good for this town. And I think all of the out parcels will be taken up in short order by good, vibrant, strong businesses. That's why I think that you all might consider that the best place for an ABC store is not at Walmart, but maybe it's in West Franklin where the aforesaid hurricane has hit very hard. Or maybe it's on the Silver Road. Or maybe it's in East Franklin. Or perhaps it's in the old Walmart Center so that we don't have a shopping center that goes dark. Or perhaps it's right where it is now so that shopping center doesn't go dark. But in respectfully, I submit to you that it's not needed at the new Walmart Center. Something else just as good will go in that place and draw traffic. But you all have the unique opportunity at this point, and I know you do, you have the unique opportunity to say that the ABC store will go in a place where the citizens need it and where the taxpayers need it, to draw to that place people spending money and driving cars so that it will build the town back up around it for the citizens and the taxpayers. In thinking about this, of course, the interests of the ABC Commission and there's the interests of the ABC Commission, there's the interests of the town of Franklin. Often they are exactly the same. But sometimes they're a little different. Not a lot different, just a little different. And maybe what's the very best thing for the ABC Commission isn't what is the very best thing for the town. Maybe what is best for the town is something really good for the ABC Commission, but maybe not the very best thing for the ABC Commission. So I go back to the statement that this board serves the town. And please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Weinkoff?
Thank you, Mayor Collins, distinguished Alderman, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Henning, Ms. Anderson, and Ms. Woodard. Thank you for holding a public hearing on this subject. This is kind of going to be uncomfortable for me because I go to church with all members of the ABC board. The mayor, Alderman Patilla, Alderman Hanlon, and Bob Scott occasionally. What has really worried me about this whole presentation is I agree with Bob Scott for a change. Additionally, when I visited Franklin in 1958 for the first time, I visited the home of Alderman Patilla, and I personally consider Pat and Cece Patilla good friends for over 50 years. Hopefully, I can disagree without being disagreeable, and my friends and fellow church members will forgive me my criticisms as you do a valuable service for our town and our town's business. Today, Orville spoke of this. Our economy is back in the 70s. We don't have enough business, we don't have enough capital, and we don't have enough jobs. Every business in town has cut and cut and cut, questions every invoice, and continually tries to cut expenses. Government seems to just go merrily along, thinking it's going to get better in a month or two or next year. Well, it is getting better, but it's very slow. Things are far from good enough to buy a $1.25 million liquor store and spend another $150,000 to $200,000 to outfit it and move to new quarters. Additionally, I oppose the method of financing because it is not fair to the citizens that oppose the liquor store to start with. I cannot imagine what is driving this decision. Your response will be, well, it's not going to cost any more, so the liquor store will retire the debt. As stated earlier, I believe it is safe to say that $1.25 million will turn into $1.4 when all expenses are added up. $1.4 million at 2.9%, Mr. Greenwood said that's what you're going to get it financed for 20 years is $92,000 a year. That's $20,000 more than you currently pay. I can assure you that figures do not lie, but sometimes they can be manipulated to look very pleasing. It is almost certain the ABC system will be privatized over that time period because there are only 7 states left in the country with our system. What happens to the rent if the ABC Commission doesn't exist anymore? The bigger problem with the liquor store, it cannot stand on its own. According to the profit and loss statement online for 2011, they showed a 2.87% profit margin or $69,000. I doubt if there's a bank in town that will loan this amount of money with a profit margin of 2.87%, and you should not underwrite it or guarantee it either. Let's look at the P&L for a minute. 2011 sales were $2.3 million. Operating expenses were $504,000. And if I can break that down just a little bit, operating expenses equal 22.5% of sales. The dollar store couldn't exist on that. Deduct the rent of $72,000 from the 504, that leaves $432,000. Remember that number, $432,000. The store is open 72 hours a week, requiring 2 people at all times, equaling 144 hours divided by a 40-hour work week is equal to 3.6 people. Now, I know they have considerably more than that, but it could be operated with 3.6 people. But anyway, let's allow 4 people to cover lunch, break, etc. At $10 an hour for 160 hours, that's $1,600 a week times 52 weeks is $83,000 payroll. Subtract that from the $432 that I spoke of earlier. That's $350,000 left for heat, lights, and water. I don't know how to spend $504,000 up there. The town board's problem is you're not getting the $250,000 you deserve each year from the ABC system. Now, the ABC system has several other problems. They need to return $250,000 to you, ladies and gentlemen, for police and schools. That's the way we voted on it originally 15 plus years ago. Number 2, their overhead is too high at $504,000 compared to Silva's at $345,000 for the same year. Number 3, the operating cost at 22% of sales, it should be 10 to 12%. The difference would deliver $300,000 to you, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that we can go from where we are to where we need to be. But it should be the goal, Mayor. If none of you believe you can hire good people for $10 an hour, I assure you you can. I have a 2011 college graduate working in my office for $10 an hour with no benefits. That is the world we're in. I would strongly disagree that you're on the correct path. There seems to be a notion that we need the finest and best, a perfect liquor store. Well, we do not. We cannot afford what you're proposing. It is not the Taj Mahal, and we do not have to market it that way. It is another store, plain and simple. You could put it in a mobile home on the head of Iola, and you'd still have $2 million plus sales a year.
Amen.
I believe we can all agree that the liquor store is the destination point, as Mr. Coward alluded to. And you have thousands visiting there each year. Walmart does not need your help. So why not use this opportunity to improve one of the other centers of town? Currently, our second busiest intersection at Palmer and Porter Street is in a depression. One corner out of 4 is occupied. East Main Street to Highlands Road could also use the boost of the liquor store traffic. There is vacant property all over town that can meet your need. There are at least 2 properties on Palmer Street for $6 a foot or less. And that would equal about 50% of the rent you're now paying. And these are asking prices, not negotiated prices that Mr. Henning could improve on. I can tell you economic times are tough. All of you know that. It's worse than Franklin and those other parts of North Carolina. And you can really get a good deal on a new rental or a different purchase. I would plead with each of you to reconsider this. It is not fair to all concerned, and the people I hear talk about this, and there are many, wonder what is the town board thinking. I want to thank you all again for your time. Thank you very much.
Only man with a hat on, Paul Schuler, come on up.
If I'd read his, I wouldn't have went. I ain't gonna do exactly what it does. Mr. Mayor, Alderman, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Henning. That fellow said it's an interesting subject of the ABC store. Although I'm not a resident of the town of Franklin, and therefore if a decision concerning the subject of the ABC store under discussion were put to a vote, I would not be eligible to participate. I personally believe that if a person is paying taxes in town, they should be able to vote in town business, but that is an issue for another day. Regardless of being eligible to vote, we're held as the owners of property and business in town limits who pay taxes to the town. I have an interest in how these taxes are used and want to see them used wisely. The proposed purchase of property in the new Walmart shopping center for the ABC store is not, in my opinion, a wise use of the taxpayer tax myself and hundreds of others pay. At this time, I believe that given the poor performance of the Franklin store as far as profit production is concerned, the energy of the ABC board would be better spent determining where there is so little profit returned to the town. For example, and I'm not getting into that, Ron just went through the property, so Franklin. But I cannot imagine a business that was returning so little profit compared to similar competitors would be considered spending over $1.25 million with a profit less than $70,000 per year. That don't make good sense, does it? I'm a business person. I've been in business for 37 years. Don't make too much sense. It seems that you should be as careful in spending the tax I pay as a business person would be in spending their own money in a business decision. I understand that at times purchasing real estate for in the future use may be a wise decision, and that sometimes in the future the purchase of a property and a location where the ABC store would be create a draw for another store at a reasonable price may make sense. However, this is not the time. The new Walmart Center area is not the place, and $1.25 million plus is not the price, especially if water rates increase help fund the purchase. Again, I wish that if this decision were put to a vote, I, as a town of Franklin taxpayer, would have the opportunity to vote. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Representing the truck route, Lawyer Street, Montycrest, Hal Derrick.
Mr. Mayor, Boyd, Green,
I wasn't gonna say anything about that ABC store, but down in Georgia, we just call it by one word, a liquor store. And that's for 2 words, just a liquor store. But I think you people ought to withdraw from what you're thinking about doing. Look at the old town hall. You can retrofit that whole thing, save a lot of money. You're gonna have the traffic, everybody passes by there every day. You probably within, I'd say, 1,000 yards of a church. I don't know what the distance on the restriction is, but you look at a church, not knocking them, but you look at a church, more than half of them drink anyway. So I don't see the, the barrier on that. You need to think about going to redoing the old town hall. Save your money, my money, your money.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the first one. Now the second one is up on the Old Cove in Forest Avenue. A few years ago, you repaved the road, put a new sewer line and all that. I brought this up before, not here, but I've called in and made complaints. But when you have a rush of water coming down Old Cove Drive and you're going up under the pavement, you got a little family of rabbits living up, well, when it's not flooding, living up under the pavement. It needs to be corrected. You need to get these big rocks and maybe shoot it.
Let's
How
talk.
we can do that.
I'm getting way too far off. We're talking about rabbits and rocks.
All right. Another thing is, sir, other thing is, 3-axle vehicles going down.
This is,
Oh, it's not in.
no. We got person to be heard later. We can give you an opportunity then if you want to talk about that.
Is that correct, my family attorney?
Yes, sir.
Bud Siler?
The bill's in the mail.
We'll be in order.
I get to use some of his time. Mr. Mayor, members of the board, I'm here as a taxpayer from the town of Franklin and a resident of the town of Franklin. And I'm here to speak in opposition of financing the ABC store at Walmart. My reasons are twofold: the location of the store and the financial way of financing it. I echo some of my predecessors in talking about Franklin and the difference in the economy in 2006 and 7 and the economy today. And I'm sure all of you, as members of the board, have been around town and you see the empty storefronts, you see the ill-kept properties in town. You all have done a great job in the past in promoting downtown, in promoting Main Street, and getting and working hard to get business to come downtown. And I just want to reiterate what others have said, is we need the liquor store downtown. It needs to be in close proximity to Main Street so that people come here rather than going to Walmart. Second is the financial part of it. They have talked about profit and loss, and I'm not here to talk about the ABC board. That's a different entity, and they have a totally different reason for being from the town board. They're in the business of selling liquor, and y'all are in the business of representing the taxpayers. And town money can be far better spent than being spent to borrow over $1.25 million to finance a store at Walmart. All of that money going to Arkansas. Thank you.
Tim Butterfield?
I'm not going to get into numbers and all that, but I just think that I don't hardly ever get involved in business in Franklin, North Carolina, but this is, it's atrocious that you want to spend $1.2 million to move a store a quarter mile down the street and make, after all the smoke clears, 1% profit. And that's all I've got to say.
Bill Martin.
Come on, Bill.
Thank you, Mayor Collins, the board, and others, for this opportunity to speak. I'm a taxpayer. I'm not a citizen of the town of Franklin, but I'm a sizable taxpayer in the town of Franklin. And I feel like that you're not trying to protect my money. My tax money is very important to me, how it is spent. And I don't feel like you're spending it for the best interest of my pocketbook. Looking at the statement that Mr. Weinkoff said, it shows 2.9% profit. County next door has up to 12% profit on theirs, very similar size operation. And I feel like my taxpayer money is being used for this purpose. It should be returning somewhere from 7 to 10% in most ventures. I talked to my son, who's a MAI, he's only 61 in the state of South Carolina, appraiser, and he said that most developers love to have a development that they can return $150 a square foot. This is costing you $200 a square foot. I feel that you have not looked at this properly. It's late to be saying this. We should have been here earlier. And I think that as others have said, it could be used and put it in a whole lot better place with the economy like it is today. Thank you.
Water sprinkle.
Mayor Collins, Board of Aldermen, ladies, I thank y'all for letting me speak at this hearing. I don't normally do this, but I felt like that this was something I had to speak out against. It just seems like the wrong thing to do. The cost of probably $1.4 million for a new facility at Walmart just seems way too high. And there are several places that could be bought for a lot less money than that. It would serve the purpose just as well. And there's all kind of places you can rent for a lot less money. You can rent for less money than you're paying where the liquor store is. And the town owns several pieces of property where the store could be placed. It wouldn't be much expense at all ours, except for whatever it is to remodel to put the store in. And I think wherever you put the store, people are going to go to the liquor store. They hunt them up. I can remember when they found liquor stores, and they wasn't illegal ones in Asheville and Mulholland, South Carolina. Everybody seems to find a store. And it's just the way it is. The west side of town could use the store big time. It's dying out there. Every month you see a difference. And I know you see things out there because I'm out there every day. And I think that what would you do with the store if the state did privatize liquor stores? I mean, you go down to use for it, and what could you do with it? I mean, I guess you could sell it, but could you get your money back? Things like that would be what I would worry about. And taxpayers paying plenty of taxes in town. I pay quite a few taxes. I live in town and own several pieces of property in town. And it concerns me that the money would be used in this manner. I think there's a better way, and I think you need to look at it, reconsider it, and try to find a better way to do this. I think we'd all be better. Thank you very much for your time.
The list is marked off. Anybody else want to add to it? And I'd be, obviously there's two sides to this issue, so certainly we'd like to hear from both sides, all sides. Give everybody the opportunity. Don't have to leave, bud.
I'm going to go sit by my law partner.
Being no more comments, I declare the public hearing closed, and we're back into open session, and ask the board, John, give us some guidance what would be appropriate.
There's no further step to be taken at this point. It's just a required step before the town can proceed to consider the financing packages that will be presented at the next meeting.
Satisfy the board? All right, then we're going to be at ease for about 5 or 10 minutes. All right. We'll move on back to session. Public session, got a couple of names. Dan Williams. Same ground rules, Dan. Same ground rules. The same ground rules as far as we're not going to rehash.
Let's not ever talk about it again. It worked real good with Penn State, didn't it?
That's a new.
Anyway, I went to the town 5 different times and I begged them that maybe they could come out and clean up Dogwood Drive. And I always took care of it for the last 30 years, but I can't do it anymore. And that didn't do any good. And last month I came to the town, I asked them again, maybe they can come out to Dogwood Drive and clean it up. That didn't do any good. Maybe I'll try again tonight. Maybe I'll come out to Dogwood Drive and maybe clean it up, because I can't do it anymore. And I'd rather you see to clean the roads up, you know, that's something you ought to be thinking about, instead of worrying about a liquor store. I don't know why that's so important all of a sudden. I'd rather see the roads clean and the town clean. I'd rather see that more than I would a liquor store, but I guess you got your mind on that instead. But sure be nice if we get the roads cleaned up a little bit.
Yeah, that's all good.
They cut down all these trees around here, the power company, and the wood's been laying on the sidewalk and on the roads, but a couple of years now, nobody's bothered to pick it up or nothing. I know y'all got a wood shepherd, you know, and last time I was here, I said, in 30 years, I've never once seen that thing operate. Maybe you ought to drag it out, you know, maybe get some use out of it. Maybe you can get the roads cleaned up. I'll be here next month.
Hal, Derek, I shut you off earlier, but now's I wouldn't do it, but
Are you gonna let him come back up there?
the Constitution says
Can
I
I be
have to.
excused?
Yeah.
I didn't vote. You gotta be a Democrat. Okay, Old Cove Drive, you need to send somebody up there to check it out. You're getting a lot of underflow under the pavement. And after a while, it's gonna fall off. Then the lawyer's gonna come. The other thing is the 3-axle vehicles. They're still coming down streets that they're not supposed to be coming down, and you got signs like this. There should be signs about like this, no 3-axle. That's still happening. And I was talking to Mr. Scott about it. He knows somebody. What's the name of that outfit?
It's, it used to be the weights and depth of DMV. I talked to Chief Adams, and we're going to get up with them.
Okay. On the 20th.
They're the ones that enforce the trucking stuff.
Okay. On the 20th of last month, about 9:30, I think, it was Sunday night or Monday night, there was a tractor trailer that was coming down through the parking lot of Franklin High School. Well, he came up that hill to get on Wyatt Street, which is, you know, one of the restrictions on 3 axles. And he got hung up. We're talking about an hour and a half. And he backed up one time and took out part of the fence down at the ball field on the visitor side. That's about the second time in something like 60 days or less than 60 days. Somebody comes through there and just hung up. And they're not supposed to be there. You got tractor trailers going to Shaw's down there by the river, coming across the parking lot and going up Old Cove. And I don't know what's wrong with the GPSs, but that's where they're sitting. I think, you know, when the DOT lays out a plan and says, you know, certain trucks on these streets, that it's a national thing. Is that right, Roland? I mean, they put it in a computer.
Well, the state.
Well, the state does. I thought since it was DOT, it was, you know, a national thing. But it still happens, and I don't know what it takes to stop it. I don't see any blue lights, anything like that going off on it. Not knocking the place, once you got a good place to park. That's about it.
Good to see you, Al.
Good to see you. You're letting your hair grow a little bit, huh?
I'm trying to keep up with you.
You're a rock group.
Gotta make a living somehow.
That's right, bro.
All right, administrative reports, sign sweep. Derek? Derek Rowland. He's the rock star.
He's a one-hour.
Speaking of rock stars, what I'm about to report on you tonight has garnered me many names, but rock star hasn't been one of them.
Many rocks, not many stars.
Yeah, no. The purpose of this report tonight is kind of to just bring you up to speed, talk a little bit about the sign sweep that recently occurred in the town of Franklin, kind of what led to that, the results that we achieved from that, and kind of what's happened since that process was initiated. I've provided you with a packet, and with, as you'll see, the front page of it is an excerpt from the sign regulations, and it's individually numbered at the bottom. And just very briefly, I'll take you through that as this will help you to kind of better understand where I'm going with this. The purpose, as you see in the sign ordinance, is highlighted on the first page here in Chapter 155, Section 1, Subsection A. Contains many reasons as to why that we have sign regulations in the town of Franklin. But the most important reason that's contained within this section, and the driving factor behind us initiating this sign sweep in the town of Franklin, was to provide for improved public safety by minimizing the undue distraction of the motoring public. And preceding this sign sweep, we had many calls come to the planning department from individuals that, in regards to various corridors throughout the city limits and the extraterritorial jurisdiction, where that they were going down the road and either pulling out of a business and almost got hit by another car due to a sign that was blocking their view, or other reasons of distraction that these signs were creating from them. And when we investigated these complaints, 9 out of 10 times when you go out there, that is the case, and they're right up on the road right away. But I said 9 out of 10. Now you'll go out there, and there's some cases where the road right of way is so exaggerated and extends so far off the center line that these signs aren't a hazard at all. But you can't enforce an ordinance on 9 out of 10 people. And for that reason, well, we took a comprehensive approach to this and went throughout, covered the whole municipality and the whole extraterritorial jurisdiction, and worked to remove all the signs that were located within the public rights of way. This sign sweep occurred on June 19th, 2012. Gerald and I, with the town of Franklin, and 2 crews from the DOT came. We were very grateful for this because the DOT has with them the accurate maps to the rights of way. And you say, well, the maps, you can just pull them up on the internet. Well, no, you can't. Those right of way maps are precious as gold, and they're antiquated in the way that many times that these maps are from when these roads were constructed through here. And so those were available, which ensured that we would have the accurate and right of ways that we were looking at in doing this initiative. Prior to this, we gave public notice to the community, and if you'll look on pages 3 through 5, that's just copies of the ad that was ran in the Franklin Press, Macon County News, and the local radio station that let them know what we were doing and what we intended to do with this sign sweep. The signs that were removed from the rights of way are not only prohibited by our local ordinance, and that's been provided for you on page 7, but they're prohibited by general statute as well. And in our local ordinance, it says that when we remove these signs, that the signs that are located in the right-of-way are forfeited to the public when they're collected. And in reading that, and with that being included in the ordinance, we did take these signs. I'll speak a little bit more to that later. But the results of the sign sweep, we gathered 80 temporary signs from the right-of-way. And that's kind of an understatement as to what we really got in that sweep, because many times we would just get the signs and take them back into the business, just let the sign owners or owners of the business know that their signs were in the right-of-way and that these were prohibited. 20 permanent signs were also documented in the public right-of-way, and that was done by the DOT. That's the DOT's deal, and they are enforcing that and issuing notices of violations to the owners of these signs that are permanent and located in the right-of-way. A copy of that letter has been included on page 10 in that packet that I passed out. When we collected these signs that were brought back to Town Hall, we'll have them here till Friday, July the 13th, and the signs are being returned to the business owners at no cost or forfeiture as set forth in the ordinance. We're giving them back to them, and we really embrace this whole opportunity as a public education process for the citizens and business owners in the town of Franklin. And they've really appreciated this fact. Now, they don't appreciate the fact so much when they come in, because 9 out of 10 of them are hotter than a $2 pistol when they come in there. Because if your sign goes missing and you're trying to run a business, I mean, and rightfully so, and they found out that, you know, they've been collected by the town of Franklin, I mean, the first initiative reaction there is you get hot. But when we explain to them the process, and we explain to them the comprehensiveness of the approach that we took to do this, and how that we enforced it across the whole city limits and throughout the whole extraterritorial jurisdiction, that they're very appreciative of this. And in saying that, I would have to say that this public outreach process that the town of Franklin undertook here is a process that I feel should be replicated in other municipalities. I mean, it's too often that business owners and citizens in the municipality are unaware of what the ordinances say or what the ordinances contain in them. And we, by doing this, there's a lot of business owners and a lot of citizens in the town of Franklin became educated as to the regulations contained in our sign ordinance, most particularly those dealing with signs located in the public right-of-way. And I think it's been a very beneficial process, and all in all, I can say not one person that's come in office hot's left hot. But they're very appreciative for the process and just that outreach and the town of Franklin being willing to work with them in accomplishing this. And there is, I mean, I had a professor tell me one time in college, never go to somebody with a problem unless you've already thought about an answer to the problem. And I've been thinking and kicking it around in my head, and I do have some suggestions as to how that this sign ordinance could be corrected to maybe alleviate some of these signs being placed in the right of way, or the need to place them in the right of way in the future. But I understand we're pressed for time, and this agenda item was to discuss the sign sweep. So I can get with Mr. Henning at a later date, and we can talk about that. But if you guys have any questions or anything, I'll be more than happy to.
Eric, it might be helpful for you to explain too what the DOT is doing about permanent signs that encroached in their right of way.
Yes, the DOT is issuing notice of violations. There were 20 permanent signs during this sign sweep that were documented by the Department of Transportation, and they are issuing notices of violations to these businesses. If you look in your packet, that's included on page 10. It's the last page. That's a sample of the letter that's coming from the Department of Transportation. And what the deal there was, if the town of Franklin documents it, the next step after the town of Franklin is to the North Carolina DOT. So essentially what you're doing is we're just eliminating the middleman, and the DOT went right into issuing the notice of violation, which inevitably would have been the effect of that anyway.
You've got some tough obstacles. First of all, you've got some requirements about political signs.
Yes.
And your predecessor, and I'm going to say probably rightfully so, had a policy of allowing a new business a little bit of advertising time, almost a grace period. And so with all of that, it's easy to see how the merchants are really not aware that they were actually in violation. Most of them, though, are aware now, so it would behoove us to put it on the calendar a little more often and before it gets built up to a point where we have to take a big sweep. But, now that we've got it softened up a little bit and everybody kind of thinking along the page, it might be easier to heck away one or two at a time when they come up if we can do that.
Right. And there is some provisions in our ordinance for that grace period in allowing a business that's just opened up to advertise that they're just open. And those signs are specifically exempted in this chapter. But signs still and yet in the public right of way, they're expressly prohibited. So you do run into a little bit of an obstacle there, and it's kind of a push and pull. And it's just something, like I say, the more, that's why, again, I'll commend this process in the DOT, because the more educated that the citizenry becomes on these ordinances, the easier that it makes everybody's job. And they've been very cooperative and very understanding, and have been really a pleasure to work with. I ain't got no black eyes or not busted nose.
You're a big boy.
I don't know about that.
Comments for Derek? Thank you, Derek.
Yes, sir.
We're going to do B, Sam, with Warren not here? Warren's there. I didn't know. I'm sorry, Warren. Nondescript back there. I'm looking for that white shirt. Report on Insurance Services Office, ISO, Chief Warren K.
Trying to fly under the radar.
Well, you did mine.
My report tonight will be basically very brief. I wanted to inform you tonight that our North Carolina Office of State Fire Marshal inspection is now complete. According to the inspector, it should have been a 4-day process. We actually completed it in 3 days. The first day is a pass or fail process, and unless you pass the first day, you don't move on into the second phase. So we know we passed the first part. The second phase is subjective, and basically the better we perform, essentially the better rating we'll receive when this process is over, which essentially calculates into savings for our residential and commercial folks on their homeowners insurance. The bad part of what I'm about to tell you tonight is that we won't officially receive our notification for anywhere from 60 to 90 days after the date of inspection. There are some contractual obligations that North Carolina Office of State Fire Marshal has to the Insurance Services Office that requires them to review it, send the results to the ISO office, and allow them 45 days to review what's already been reviewed before they make it public. So hopefully, either at the meeting in September or the meeting in October, I can come back to you and actually give you the rating that we received. And at that time, hopefully translate that into some numbers for you to see what that means for the folks that are actually in our district and what we can save those folks. I will tell you that it went very well. My general impression is that you're not going to be disappointed. And I would like to say that for the folks that helped us, the members of my department, the members of the other departments that came in and helped us, I'd like to publicly tell them how much we appreciate that. Also, your staff, Sam and Janet, bent over backwards to make sure that we got what we needed, we got the process complete, and also to you all. You all stood behind us, even though we bumped that date up about 4 months earlier than what we thought it was going to be, so we really had to step it up and make that work. But you all stood behind us, even when I had to come up here sometimes, and the best argument I could give you was that you just needed to trust me. So hopefully you won't be disappointed, and that will all work out. Once we get those numbers back, which, like I said, will be September, October, insurance companies are normally given about a 60 to 90 day transition period to upgrade their system to get all the numbers in their systems, which means that all this should come effect to our citizens sometime probably around the first of the year. So I just want to tell you that everything went well. It's probably the smoothest one I've ever been involved with, and tickled to death to this. If anybody has any questions or comments, I'll be glad to take those, but other than that, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
How much did the equipment, I know we went out and signed paperwork to replace some of the aged equipment that the town has. I knew the ladder truck, did
Very much
did
so.
very well, so.
Very much so, and it's hard for me to explain up here at the podium. We get points assigned to our vehicles, and we ended up with, we had 5 trucks that were 100%, and we ended up getting one of the last ones up to 99% just by moving some stuff around, which is almost unheard of. The ladder truck really made a difference on the rating. You're going to get inside the city limits. The last engine that we bought didn't necessarily count so much inside the city limits other than allowing us to have some spare equipment, which gets you points. Where you're really probably going to see the difference in that is in the rural district. The folks that live in the ETJ are just outside the city limits. I think you'll be, I'm 99% sure that you're going to be happy with what you do.
Warren, I would just like to say, Warren, I think you've done a great job, and I think you yourself are pulling your crew together, made this possible.
Thank you. We actually have some very good folks. I have a lot of good folks that help us do what we do.
Thank you. Water study update recommendations, Sam?
Well, we've got the consultant, W.K. Dixon, is on site accumulating data at this point, touring facilities, checking sites. The big impact, I think, is going to be in the evaluation of the existing water plant, the evaluation of the existing tank system, and the primary evaluation of the town major water lines that interconnects all of that. And that leads me to make 2 observations I just want to bring to the attention of the board tonight. The first is that for the duration of this study, until we can get the results returned to this board and have the time to digest and have the consultants come up and explain the ramifications to the board, I would recommend that we postpone or work with anybody that is actually wanting to make a major water line addition to the town system until such a time as we can evaluate, based on the new data in the study, what the impacts are going to be on the town water system. And second of all is just to reiterate to the board that we have soon to start a collateral process of looking at the use of our remaining capacity, both water and sewer, and that is going to be a very important part of the presentation of the water report as well. But in general, things moving along very well. Data accumulation is doing very well. And so far, we're quite pleased with the work of our consultants. And we're still on track, I think, to have a product reported to the board by the time frame of mid-November, early December.
That's what we were figuring. So it's going smooth.
Yes.
Question for Sam? Are we good on number 6? What is?
That's something that I think Mr. Curtis was going and asking if that be pulled from the agenda.
Is that right? Yes. Okay, number 7, old unfinished business, none. I've never seen a agenda item that says old unfinished business, none. But is there something to agenda item 7 that I'm missing? None. None. All right, under new business, Alderman discussion, Vice Mayor Merlin Curtis.
Okay.
Well, recently, the relationship between Mayor Collins and the town board have been strained to a great degree due to actions taken by Mayor Collins regarding number 1, the location of the ABC store, and comments in the newspaper, and now the issuing of an apology to Chief Hicks of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians for the spraying of herbicide on the mound. After closing the town board meeting on June the 4th, Mayor Collins passed out a copy of the letter of apology to Chief Hicks on town stationery, identified himself as the mayor of the town of Franklin, and signed as mayor. This was done without approval by the Board of Aldermen and a total disregard for the previous decision that was made by the board on May 7th. As a result of his actions, the media has used this and other articles to refer the board members as uncaring, exercising poor judgment. Right or wrong, the decisions of this nature are the responsibility of the Board of Aldermen and not the office of the mayor. I submit that these actions of the mayor were a gross abuse of assumed powers. And I motion that Mayor Collins be censured for his actions.
May I follow up on that just a little bit? I don't want to be left out of that, Mr. Curtis. Include me in your censure.
Well, all right.
Because I went to see the chief. What the town has done is inexcusable. Inexcusable. Okay. But I do want to be censored also by this board. I make a motion, I'll be included.
Well, no, I'll just say, just very briefly. I'm proud of what I did. It was well within my bounds, what I did. I would do it again. My letter read very carefully. It was from me as the mayor personally. It's how I felt. I was not going to send a letter out to the chief of the Cherokee Nation on my legal letterhead or on a blank piece of stationery. Obviously, we're at times where issues are tough and sensitivities are high, and I understand that, but there'll be no apologies. Now, if you want to make a motion, we're going to put something on the record, let's go ahead and take care of it.
I made the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay, what's next? Legal, approval of alcoholic beverage control store lease. John?
Mr. Mayor, the attached item to 9A is the lease that has been presented, proposed lease between the town of Franklin and the Franklin ABC board for the Bright Myers property that we're also familiar with at this point. That board has officially approved the lease in the form for you. What it does in terms of financing is tie the ABC store lease amount to the amount of the financing that you'll approve at the next board. So whatever amount that is, it will be covered by ABC store revenues. I hope at this point you've all had an opportunity to read through the lease, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have about it. I would remind you that it was one of the conditions of the contract with Bright Myers was that you'd be able to get into a satisfactory, at least satisfactory to the town with the ABC board, because if you didn't have the tenant that all of this was started for to begin with, it wouldn't be an important to the project. So, but we have come to that point of checking that box.
What says the board?
Well, we have did you say we have the numbers in the banks now in office?
Right.
How many banks are there?
Right now, negotiation one, collateral bids ready to go out in case that negotiation doesn't.
Why are we only looking at one bank, say?
We're looking at a holder of an existing note.
Has some kind of deal been worked out? What's going on there?
Well, that bank is crunching numbers, responding to our initial inquiry. If that's not satisfactory, then or to the bank for that matter, then it will go out to a placement bid among several other banks.
But we get to that point through the services of the town's consultant for and it's the same consultant we've used for several other financing processes just like this one. They have put out requests for proposal from several different lenders and are helping us winnow down the best deal.
looking prospectively, there's really, I see two hurdles remaining, at least two. One is we have, under the contract, what is the interest rate that we said that we would do? 4%. That was never what we, it was below 4. Absolutely, if we need to go back and review. And then,
Mr. Mayor, the first version of the contract that I brought to the board had a 5% full. And the board revised it down to 4.
and the appraisal is 1.25 million. Now, the appraisal will be done presumably by an independent source picked by the LGC.
I think it would be picked by the bank.
Well, by
Right.
the bank, which we will not have any say in who that is.
I don't know. We can certainly ask.
And then, should it appraise at an amount lower than that, then the town certainly has the opportunity to. So what are you asking the board to do now?
I would ask the board to approve this form of lease and authorize the mayor to sign it on behalf of the town.
Authorize Mr. Greenwood to sign.
I think I have you on there, Mr. Mayor, but I mean, I certainly can change it to the manager if that should be in the motion as part of the authorization.
This is just a lease with the ABC commission. It still does not obligate us to go through with the loan or anything.
No, if any of the other conditions that are remaining at this point that allow the town to void that contract come into play, the lease will become meaningless. I mean, you can't lease on a piece of property you don't own. So.
Right. But have we actually approved all aspects yet of this lease, or is this just been something that was proposed of the lease that you're talking about now, the ABC commission? We haven't pre-approved it.
Well, I guess that's what I'm asking for tonight. I mean, one of the conditions again of the purchase was to make sure that you had a lessee.
Right.
To on board.
It was a condition that they wouldn't care.
Correct.
They wouldn't care.
No.
Yeah, it was our condition. Have we all, has everybody read it to the level where they're very comfortable with it? Because it's obviously not yet there.
The ABC commission has approved this lease.
Yes.
That's what that letter was.
Yes.
We got a letter.
Yeah.
And that signifies their approval of this form of lease, but also commitment for payment of the full amount financed for the purchase over 20 years.
What says the board?
I make a motion to approve the lease.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed?
And Mr. Mayor, before we leave that particular topic, the question was raised and has been several times, what exactly would the town do with that space if there was privatization or for whatever other reason it didn't have a tenant anymore? There is a possibility that actually the Bright Myers legal counsel has broached, and it's something I kind of explored the legal way to do, but they are interested in a right of first refusal to repurchase if the town ever is interested in divesting itself of that property. So there may be a way to sort of lock in a price. It might have to be just sort of a guaranteed minimum because you're obligated to go through a bid process.
Right of first refusals will remain, they just match whatever the market bid is.
Like I say, we'll have to work some kinks out of it. But I just wanted to let you know that is a possibility. And Mr. Mayor, item 9B, I would just ask the board to withdraw that. think that easement issue has been taken care of. I'll let the board know for sure when it's final.
All right, now that just leaves you down to 9C. We know what 10 means.
Okay. 9C
That's a German.
started from an interesting conversation that Mr. Derek Rowland and I had. He called and said, he asked me what's the best way to go about having replacement members for the planning board brought to the town board's attention. And I said, well, what does the ordinance say? And he said, what ordinance? And as we dug back through it, it really appears to us that in adopting the UDO, a minor detail got left out, and that was the phraseology that said the town hereby appoints the board of adjustment as to sit as the planning board as well.
Who found that?
It was,
Derek.
well, it was, we both found what wasn't there kind of at the same time.
Yeah, you found what's not there.
Yeah, you found what, yeah.
I believe that there is saving language in the UDO that says anything that's not in direct conflict with what came before is just continued in effect by the UDO. And so I think that past appointment is sufficient. I don't want to have to prove it. So the point of this ordinance is to reiterate and clarify that the town appoints the Board of Adjustment to sit as its planning board. And I would have that to you in a final form that you could act on tonight, except that that is a land use regulation required to be by ordinance, and you can't adopt an ordinance of land use regulation unless you have a public hearing. So that's why I'm asking you tonight to schedule a public hearing for the August meeting, August 6, 2012 at 7:05. And I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have.
We have a motion to that effect, what, 7:05 usually the appointed time?
Yes.
So moved. Second. All in favor, raise your hand. Any further business before the board?
Yes, sir.
Bob?
Mr. Mayor, it seems like this censure came about in a vote with no discussion, which makes me believe, how many of this board knew about this prior to tonight? I sent out an email asking what this agenda item was all about. Billy answered me, but it was not about this agenda item. You're discussing a public official. The state law is very clear on this. You're not supposed to do it behind any kind of closed doors. It has to be done in the open. I went to see Chief Hicks myself. Your letter to the chief stated emphatically it was personal. I made that very clear in my meeting with the chief, that it was personal. Just because you're an elected official doesn't mean that you can't have a personal opinion or do what you think is ethically correct. And I will say, I have been involved writing about politics, and tonight was something I've never seen before. And I hope I never see it again. If there was some kind of decision to be made like this, every board member should have been in on it or know what was going on. And I don't mind if this board wants to censor me. I would feel it or not. That's all I've got to say.
I did this on my own.
Nobody on this board, you.
Bob. And I was out of town. I didn't answer your email because I was with my wife in South Carolina at the hospital and back surgery.
But you saw my email.
So I saw your email when I looked at the email this morning.
Well, I, for one, as a member of this board, am proud of what the mayor did.
But I think that it causes disunity in the board when the board votes they not to send the apology, and then the apology comes. And I got a copy of a follow-up letter, And, you know, sometimes you wonder if the board made the right decision or didn't make the right decision on it. Like, we did get a follow-up letter from, after the receipt of mayor's apology. And you know what the chief wants? He wants the mound. That's right. That's what the chief wants. He wants the mound. You're not going to be satisfied with any less. And so if you go back and realize that the board could have apologized and it wouldn't have been any different with them, but they made a decision, you know, right or wrong. And all that needs to be respected. We don't need to make a decision at one meeting and come back in and try to upset the decisions that have been made by the board without a reason to do so.
I don't think the chief took it that way. I don't think anybody else took it that way except this board.
But it gave the appearance, as did your visit, since you said to include you, as your visit did, it gave the appearance that the whole town of Franklin was involved. Matter of fact, the whole town of Franklin got a letter as a result of it.
I'll keep going.
If a censure is meaningless in the legal sense, they don't have authority to reprimand, censure, impeach me or anything, but it's an expression, and I understand that. My role as mayor, I take very seriously, and I have a voice as mayor, which sometimes is different. I was very much surprised this evening. I had some idea of about what it was about, but when it was suggested that brought in the ABC component, then it's just very obvious that I'm in a different camp on a couple of very serious issues. I would hope that you all from the town would like for elected officials to have differences of opinion and not be afraid to state them. I'm not gonna, that was a board of aldermen vote. I was not bound by it, and it was reported as being a personal apology. It was from the heart as a personal apology. I believe the public accepted it as a personal apology. I'm troubled now because it's brought an issue that maybe I thought had some degree of quietness to it, toned down, now to be back up in the public, and we need to be building bridges and not walls with our neighbors. So I understand it's hard times around the table, and I'll accept that because I've been with these folks for years, and we'll get over this and we'll move along. But I understand what they're saying, but if you're expecting an apology or even a real consideration that what I did was wrong, it's not forthcoming. Anything else? No, sir? No, sir. All right, we'll be adjourned.
Mr. Mayor.